You can pick either from like pre-existing characters that people have created, or you can create your own, like craft the backstory of the character, craft the plan, and put them inside the world and see how and then you can watch it come to life and interact with it. And but on the technical side, like what's happening is more like we have two core component, which is like the game engine, I would say, like it's still a game engine, and the AI agent framework.
Hello, Edgar. How are you doing?
Doing great, and you? How are you doing, Tom?
I'm doing very well. You're calling us from where today?
From Paris. I'm from France, so I'm calling from my home country.
Oh, that's
Yes.
very cool. Are you spending all of your time there? Are you full time there, or do you kind of travel?
No, so I was a couple months ago. I was in San Francisco for a couple months, and I'm trying to move like there for permanently.
Mhm.
But right now, I have to take some time and be in Paris for a couple months.
Okay, cool, cool. Well, Edgar is the founder of AI Reality TV, which I think is a super fun and kind of interesting space. And I feel like it's a bit of an emerging space, but I'll let Edgar talk about that. AI Reality TV is an entertainment platform. Users create endless worlds and stories and with their own characters who then go ahead and come to life in fascinating and interesting ways and have conversations with each other, and you can chat with them. It's just a really cool, novel use of the technology that's becoming available today. I suppose, in your words, Edgar, what is AI reality TV?
Yeah. That I mean, you said it right. It's like it's a platform where anyone can come with an idea of what they want to create a universe, a world, like a whole, and they can basically give them the tools how they could create a simulation of that world, like create the map, create the characters, have each character be its own little AI, which leads to them having interesting behaviors that mimic human behaviors, and have them have discussions that look really like that are much more interesting than everything that would come from like a scripted video game. And I think that's what like the core thing behind it is how we can create like an entertaining experience for the user that is not really it's not a video game, it's not a show or a movie, it's something new that is like its whole own thing, that is a simulation of world that you can, like you said, interact with it, you can watch it, you can share it, you can even join with your own AI character that's like a representation of you in that universe. And I think that's what got people excited about the idea, and that's at least what got me excited.
For sure. It's super interesting. I've seen it referred to as interactive generative entertainment, which feels like a new category almost because it's so unscripted and it's so interactive at the same time. It's like choose your own adventure, but the adventure itself has yet to be defined or written.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're aiming towards, is like how we can create this kind of new experience that no one knows exactly what it looks like yet, like the final vision of this. But I think we're like having a clear idea that there is something there that's going to be super interesting, and we're trying to build like towards that.
Okay, before we go a little bit further into the AI reality TV, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your background. How did you kind of get to this point in your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I studied computer science, software engineering. I specialize in like data science. So I started like I did for a first internship where I was doing like actual AI, like making models, training models before the whole LLM era. So it was like at that time we're making like vision models or computer vision, and we're like working with convolution networks. I don't think that at that time was barely we were starting to talk about attention networks, and but then yeah, it was 1 or 2 years before the boom of like these GPTs and stuff like that. So that's where I kind of got started with AI and how I got to like experience this new technology. And this is super exciting. But at that time, to make a company out of it, you had to like to make something very interesting. You had to work for like big tech, for like either Google, or you had to work for something for a big corporation if you wanted to make something interesting, because otherwise it wasn't that interesting. At that time, I really wanted to make my own company. So even before finishing college, I joined with a friend, and we started the first startup, which is called Click et Moi, which was in France where we create a platform where we can connect older people with students so they can help them with technology. So it was like a matchmaking platform. And so I worked on it for like we got some pretty good like traction right away. We got like users, revenue, and I worked on it for like a year and a half. And I mean, we started to make some real money with like pivoting to B2B. And at that point, I mean, the company was doing well, but I wasn't that excited about the B2B vision, like kind of selling to big companies, this kind of training for their clients. And so I decided to leave the adventure. And I know the company is doing well, but I was like, I want to go back into doing exciting product stuff, doing and seeing all like the new things that were happening in AI. I was like, let's go back to that field that I was really interested a couple of years back. That was like almost 2 years ago. And so I started like going back working for another startup that was doing a bunch of like more technical AI ML stuff. And then at some point I was like, I still want to do my own thing. So let's try to find something that's interesting. And I think that comes to like your next question is how did I came up with AI reality TV and how did that started? And so basically I when I decided to work on my own thing, I joined this program called Build Space, which is like an online community and also in-person community in San Francisco. And I started experimenting a bunch of different AI ideas. And I decided to go all in on this in January and leave France to go to the US to San Francisco for a couple months. And this is where I was. Now I need to find something that I'm willing to work on for like the next couple of years.
Hmm.
And this is so I was reading a bunch of like AI research paper, different like I was super interested in all the AI agent field, and I found about the human interactive simulacra of human behavior. I don't know if you're probably familiar with the paper, which is the Stanford paper where they put like AI agent inside a video game world, and they're trying to see if that would mimic real human behaviors, like having conversation, movement, decision that and patterns that looks very similar to how a human would behave. And I found that super fascinating. I was like, oh, and this came out like 6 months before that. So this is crazy that no one has done anything with like this technology. Like
Yeah.
this is like a paper. There is like some code on GitHub. There is a couple project, and but there's nothing like there is no product or company that's like where the core is to create these kind of simulations. And so I wanted to experiment with that. And so I did a bunch of different experiments. Maybe we can go around with that, but I don't know if you have any question.
That's really interesting. I love the idea of really keeping up with some of the latest research. And then you were already in the headspace of trying to think about what your next move is. You know the space that you're into, and you found something really interesting and thought, feels like there's an opportunity here. And if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, you still enjoyed building software and products for more at like the consumer level rather than trying to build something for B2B.
Yeah, that's something I realized while making exactly this project, and that I get a lot more excited when like the product is more about like getting a consumer product that's like that anyone could be using rather than having to like build a B2B SaaS startup, which is a very different company to build. I mean, it's interesting. I tried to do it. Like I did a couple tries. It's more like you find a problem, you build a problem, then you have to nail a distribution and have like all this kind of like B2B sales. What I like about consumer is more like you build like something really cool. And if people find it really cool, it's gonna like market itself, kind of like ChatGPT is kind of like the perfect example of that. They just shipped a product that was really cool. They did no PR, nothing. Just the thing is so good that people just experience it the first 10 seconds they use it. They find it cool, and then it just spreads. And I like that about consumer product is like, and that's where I want to get AI reality to be in like the next couple months is like be that good so that people will start using it and sharing it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. And there's nothing more validating than building something that starts to grow on its own. And it's really hard to do, I think. But I find they're the most durable, valuable, long-lasting products out there. And it's something pretty special when it happens. And so I'm looking forward to seeing AI reality TV take off and have, my family asking about it and if I'm on it.
Yeah.
At a
I hope one day.
at a high level, how does it work then? How does AI reality TV work? How do the worlds like interact with themselves, I suppose?
How does the product work, or how does the technology work? Because I mean, the product is like, you come on the platform, you create a world, you can create different characters, you can pick either from like pre-existing characters that people have created, or you can create your own, like craft the backstory of the character, craft the plan, and put them inside the world and see how and then you can watch it come to life and interact with it. And but on the technical side, like what's happening is more like we have two core component, which is like the game engine, I would say, like it's still a game engine, and the AI agent framework, and how we try to like the core of the product is how we bring those together in like a coherent manner.
Mm.
And so you have like an AI agent that takes possession of an AI characters, and that instead of having everything scripted, like in a regular video game where every action of that character is scripted, here you just ask you like tap into the like the cognition power of the LLM to decide what to do next, what to say next. And but to decide, he has also to have perception of the environment. So we feed the character with like what is going on around him. Like, is there is a tree, there is a there is another characters that's talking. Based off of those observations, how do you plan what the next action you're gonna do? And that's like the core mechanic that drive this simulation. And I like the fact that it's very simple. Like we're trying to actually to make it like to build like the very simple blocks from, but because it's powered by like a AI, like LLM that has like creativity, yeah, it has a lot of randomness,
Mm.
but not like random, but like creativity randomness that creates like emerging behavior. So from like very simple core mechanic, you can have like a very dynamic world with things that you create something with very little bricks, and then it turns into like a very complex ecosystem. And I think that's what like exciting also about this technology is like.
It's so fascinating to think about that with this initial seed, like the compounding result of this creativity, but from a number of LLMs with slightly different like worldviews and perspectives about their specific environment, right? And the decisions they make based on like their perspective of the world. Has there been any, I'm sure there's been some interesting results. Is there any that come to mind while you were developing this or that you've seen in the wild that kind of surprised you?
Yeah, there's been a lot of like different like I'll also come like if we have some time talk about the different experiments that I did like while I was in San Francisco, because it wasn't always like that the product. But yeah, like the one thing that would come to mind like earlier, like today or yesterday, so I'm developing this new agent framework where I give them the ability to go and do something and talk about it, and I created those two like dummy characters, which one of them goal is to go fishing, and the other is to go get a drink at the tavern with a buddy, with a friend. And basically, I was just trying to debug and try to make it work. And what's funny with this technology is like even when you're like developing with it, like you have like some funny things happening while like in the dev environment. And for example, they were stuck in a loop and they were like, I'm gonna go fishing, you want to come? And they're like, yeah, let's come. And then he's like, oh, let's come to the tavern instead. And then they decided to, he's like, no, we decided to go fishing. And because the system is not working properly, they were in a loop. And then they ended up deciding to let's keep fishing, and they went to get a drink at the tavern, and they got to convince themselves that yeah, they just got to get a drink rather than fishing.
That's
And it was partly due to like bad like mistakes in the code, but there was a funny result that came out of it, which I think is always a funny thing that whenever I'm developing it, there's a lot of times like this where, I mean, I remember in the beginning, I just set up like characters that are called test, like the typical thing that you do when you're developing, called test, and I put all the fields to test. But because they're like characters in the world, there's those two character named test that's gonna meet each other, and they're like, hi test, how are you test? They're like, no, I'm just here to test the conversation system. Don't mind me. And
Yeah.
then they go they go away. And that was like unexpected behavior that happened just while testing, just while developing. And there's a lot of examples like that, which is why I like to work on this because it's so much fun.
It's yeah, never a dull moment. I think that's hilarious putting these entities, these agents together. So you mentioned some of the experiments leading up to like the product and the technology that you have today. What were some of those?
When I started, I first like created a little like content around like a couple characters and shared it on social media. That got like an initial like coverage of like how that could look like. And then I decided to let's create one world and let anyone can like buy characters to join this single big world and kind of like be this is the universe and it's gonna run 24/7 and you can have your own characters in that show. And that was like the first version of AI reality TV, one world, and you can just get your character inside of it. That was like super interesting to get like that got the first traction, got the first like 100 people to buy a character, and that was like super exciting to see and how people when you give them the ability to create the characters, it's actually a lot more fun than it was. It's just me creating characters. Is like I'm not that creative of a person, and when I gave that to other people, I was like, oh, now they're making like crazy characters that go around and do some crazy stuff that I would never have thought of reading, and that was super cool. Another experiment that I did when I was in San Francisco was I wanted to test how we can turn that into like a social platform. And so I had the idea for creating an AI simulated party, which might sound a bit weird, but it's like we're gonna create like a real event in San Francisco, a real party, but 3 days in advance, everyone gets an AI replica of themselves, like an AI characters that match the personality. And then we throw the party inside the simulation and everyone goes around, meet each other, like kind of like a real party, real event.
Yeah.
And then I created like we created like a rating system of like who do you like the most? Who are the top three people you like the most? Who are the bottom three people you should probably not go talk to during the real event? And then when the day of the real event happened, you get like your oh yeah, here are the top people that I should talk to, and here are the conversation we already had in the simulation. And that kind of went a bit viral on Twitter, and we got like more than 200 people showed up at the actual event, which was like for me was pretty crazy. Coming like from I've only been here for like couple like 2 months in SF, and it was like a huge event where we got like people played along with it. Some people were like, "Oh, this is cool. I never talked to that many people at the party." Really like that was a something I was really curious to test. I think now we're like taking a step back on like building the technology and this more of like core layer that makes the simulation interesting. But I really like this idea of like using it to like connect people in like as their avatar join the world. Like use this avatar as like a proxy of like, oh, your avatar is meeting someone else, and you can kind of meet the real person behind the avatar if you feel like it. And that was like a very cool experiment.
I love that. I think that's great. It's like priming a relationship between like real people using AI to kind of kick it off and initiate that relationship. How did that work out? Like how did the simulation reflect what happened in real life?
What do you mean? How well did the conversation match? Or
Yeah, so when you were matchmaking people at the event, did it feel like those were like appropriate matches and the AI did like a reasonable job of um
I wouldn't say it was like like we didn't use like some crazy like psychology like algorithm or technique. So it wasn't that accurate. It was more of like you had like actually surprising result where it was very accurate sometimes, but sometimes it was like completely just some friends were matched as like worst enemy. And but that actually made the thing even like people actually cared more about who they didn't like in the simulation and when it was some of their friend. And they could see like actually some of the thoughts of the AI about the person were actually not that far from reality on like, oh, you're talking too much about your startup or and and so they're kind of making fun, even though it's like not really reflecting perfectly. I would say like when it did, like the couple of bits where it did, like people were like, oh, holy shit, this is working. And I mean, most of the time it wasn't that accurate because we only like ask a couple, like 5 questions, if I remember, about each person to kind of try to assess the personality. So it was kind of accurate, but nothing like crazy, like scientifically accurate in terms of it's really hard to get how a person would talk, how a person would react to another person. I think we can get there by like after some time where we can like we have ideas on how we can get person to put his personality a lot more inside the like give a lot more of his personality to the AI. Like because I think if you just give a form, it's pretty limited. Like the question you can ask, and nobody wants to fill out a 50 questions form.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's more of like a fun experiments with some truth, some more of like entertaining results. But yeah,
I love the idea of your AI avatar just being really candid with your friend's AI avatar, like saying things that you wouldn't have, and you would just sit there and listen to them
yeah. I
about.
hope I didn't create any trouble between friends. Didn't destroy any friendship with it.
That's great. So, how are you thinking about AI reality TV in the future? Like for you, what does this space look like? We can go far out, like 5 years or even 10 years. Like what? How do you imagine the future?
That's a hard question because there's like a lot of ways this could go. Right now, I think the idea behind it is kind of what I was talking about. Is like this isn't not video game, not TV. This is something, and I don't think this is something in between. I think that's usually the mistake people make. Is like this is an interactive show or an interactive TV. I think like that it's more of like a new kind of medium, which is creating a whole universe or a whole lore. Which is I take the example, for example, of if you take Lord of the Rings, you have like the Lord of the Rings books, you have movies, you have video games about Lord of the Rings. But the idea with this is that you can actually create the universe itself of Lord of the Rings, for example. Like once the technology gets good enough, or you get like create like this kind of alternate worlds that are non-existing. You can have them like you can create all the characters, all the world, all the mechanics, and basically from this you can extract. You can create a new game, you can create a new movie, you can create a book. But it's like how do we get to the core of this, which is like create the universe, the lore, the and have like really be the like the user can create whatever he thinks like is this like the perfect universe or the more entertaining, whether it is realistic, whether it is fantasy, and then the vision for it is like once you have this kind of tool that enables, then you can have people watch, interact, as I said, like generate other forms of content out of it. And as the technology evolves, like the simulations get more complex, like we shift from 2D to 3D with physics, with more of like actual looks more like a video game, probably like a modern video game type of simulation. And then at some point when you can also like think of ways to interact with it, which right now is like maybe you just can watch, talk, and interact with like classic video game. But maybe like once the VR gets like, I mean, even right now it's pretty good. Imagine just experimenting it as like a VR thing, and rather as like experimenting a video game in VR or a movie in VR, you're experimenting it's just the universe, this universe in VR, which is very different. I don't know. That's like far in the future, but I think that's the vision with where this could go.
Yeah. Do you feel like that future is inevitable?
I think that future is most likely of like getting these type of like very complex simulation. I know there is like some kind of like simulation type of like we don't want to put everyone with a VR headset inside like a virtual world and everyone has like its own virtual world and nobody talks to each other. I think that's like not something that we want, but I think that's something that's gonna be at least technology is gonna enable it. I think we have to find a way that makes it like none. This is just kind of a new medium, which is like movies. You have movies, you have video game. This is like a new way to experience something that someone created. I think that's also important. It's like creates something that like have it the user creation at the center. Like you're creating this, crafting this very unique world, and then you can have other people to experience this world. But yeah, I think that the technology is gonna get there. I mean, there are already like a lot of bricks that could enable like this kind of experience. Like it's not that far, I would say.
I agree. And I do feel like what you're just, I'm very excited for that future. I agree with you that I think that is going to be a really big part of our future moving forward for the next several decades, I imagine. And I'm actually really excited about all of the potential benefits that that can bring to a lot
Mm.
of people who otherwise are not going to be able to benefit in the same way as, you know, us and more privileged people. I feel like there are people with disabilities who are going to be able to experience a lot more than they can today. I'm very excited to see the results of like the human connection building. So people are going to create things, other people are going to experience them. You're going to be able to more closely interact with people who you otherwise wouldn't have been able to. And you're going to be able to share things that you create with more people that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to in a way that wasn't possible before. So I'm very optimistic about that. I love what you're doing with AI reality TV. Last question for you. Work related, life related, world related. What are you most excited about these days?
And these days, I'm pretty focused. Like this, I came back to Paris to like focus on my apartment work. So my answers probably be a little bit boring and AI related. But if we decide like the whole AI reality TV, I'm mostly like following all the progress that's been made like to the AI field and all the technology that's emerging. I feel like what excites me the most is when I see how that enables more creation, more like the fact that we have like like better tools, better ability to generate like either whether it is like content with like all the new video models or it is more of like even hardware stuff or what I like to see is like all these new project and startup. I think like we are starting to see that builders gets like once you have like a better tool, which is AI to build, there's a lot of cool stuff that is being built. And I think that's like what's exciting me is like seeing all of this tiny progress that start some people start to pick them up and start to build some really cool stuff with it that weren't possible before. And like yeah, very recently there's like all this AI video, like you have a dream machine, you have like yesterday they just released the new or today I think runway announced. I don't know, yeah, depending on the time zone. And I think those type of tools, like they can be seen as like, oh, that's gonna replace people in Hollywood. This is gonna destroy like this whole industry. I think that's should be more seen as like, oh, now there is someone in his bedroom somewhere in the world that has access to that has like very little money, very no equipment that can create like an amazing movies about his life story. And I think this kind of like vision is going to be there by the I think by the end of this year we'll have like very decent AI with a generated movie, for example, and I think that's like super exciting to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm firmly in the camp of AI democratizing access to interesting like creative ideas for a lot of people around the world that, like I said before, wouldn't otherwise be able to create what they want to create. And I'm looking forward to it. Edgar, thank you so much for chatting today
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me. It's been great.
reality TV. If people want to check that out, where should they go?
AIreality.tv. That's as simple as that.
Easy peasy. We'll put all of the links and everything in a variety of descriptions wherever you're watching this. Edgar, have an amazing day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.